Well, hey there team, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my overview of the Forever Winter. For those not across it, I do overviews on this channel. I have a look at the first 2 hours of a game because it's the Steam refund window. Steam says you can make up your mind in that time about whether you want to keep a game or not, and broadly as a rule, I would agree and say 20 hours in, you're probably not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So it's a short punchy video, keep it around 10 minutes, broad strokes info, and then you can make up your mind on your own. So I'm very mixed on the Forever Winter. In fact, I kind of had a little bit of a tantrum in my Discord about it, and yet here I am covering it. When I did first install it, I was very excited, very hyped. I'm kind of part of the gaslit train that enjoys the rhetoric around this. It's a game for gamers, and they did some trailers about their price pointing, and you know, it was pretty down to earth sort of stuff. And then this turned out to be no less than the 5th game of the day that I had tried to run that was early access that was just a broken fucking mess. So especially at launch, I couldn't get the frame rate down even in the launch menu, and I just sort of spat the dummy and cracked the sads. The reason for setting that up is obviously I've changed my tune a bit now that I've played it some more, but that sort of ultra early access sentiment carries through all of this game. In fact, I think there is probably a strong argument that it shouldn't have been launched at all, and again, this is speculative. I haven't really gone into a deep dive, but I feel like the Forever Winter has kind of caught a bit of a popular zeitgeist, right? There's a FOMO component to it at the moment, and I'm pretty sure that they forced their early access launch earlier than what they had planned to try and capitalize on that kind of uptick virality, which you can't really fault them for, at least in this current environment where, you know, I would argue there's too many games and they're all scrambling over each other trying to get noticed, much like YouTubers with clickbait bullshit. So look, they took their chance, they shot their shot. But I think their legacy for a while now is going to be how they shit the bed when they launch their game into early access. We'll see if they overcome that. But for now, look, I really do like it. Broken and messy and janky and tech demo-y as it is, I'm happy to put my money behind it to see where it goes, in the true original spirit of early access. But know that full well going in. There are flashes of brilliance here. And the main thing that really brought me back was the idea that under the hood, it is very AI systems driven, which is something I was ranting about in another video when I covered Shadows of Doubt. You should check that video out. But the idea that it's sort of, you're a small fish in a big pond and the rest of the world goes about its business, engages with its systems regardless of your sort of input. And that's a murder mystery game. Normally these system-based systems are economy-driven, like things like X4. And in this case, it's more a case that you're not the main character, you're a scavenger in a sort of post-apocalyptic battlefield, while there are like warring factions just throwing units at each other going ballistic, right? So they don't really care. And for the most part, the systems might seem a bit janky at first. You know, their kind of line of sight is very short. You can walk quite close to a lot of dudes and they won't notice you. But I feel like maybe you outsource a little bit of the RP heavy lifting there and go, maybe they do notice you, but they don't really care. They don't triage you as a problem because, again, you're this nobody scavenger trying to find water. And then, oh wow, I found a piece of a gun assembly. I'll take that home and impress everybody, right? So they're too busy trying to kill each other in this factional warfare. So conceptually, it's a really good idea. And I would actually say that it executes on that fairly well. And the nature of that beast is you're going to have, again, weird detection ranges, janky AI. There's some aimbotting problems occasionally. You just get absolutely lasered by a dude. But that's sort of the fun, if you will. If this is sort of, and this is going to resonate or annoy people in a 50-50 split, I would say. Some people like the suck. I do. Others are going to absolutely steer clear from this because they prefer the kind of main character power fantasy. So it's a really cool idea. The environmental design is wild. And before I lose the thought, to me, this is the best attempt at a Terminator 2 future Skynet post-apocalyptica setting in a game, which is not something that's done very often, even in movies and that, but it's also something people are really begging for. There are a couple of different maps that you deploy into. You can play co-op. I haven't really given that a go. You can recruit dudes to go with you. The AI is as miserable as you probably think, to the point where you're probably just better off going on your own. You run in, you collect all sorts of bits and pieces, but mostly water. Water's the main thing that you want to collect, and It has this unique system, which I think people are really getting angry about, where it essentially ticks down while you're offline. And I'm not going to defend it and say it's a good mechanic, but I'm also going to point out that this is a mechanic that's existed in many, many different games. I just feel that the crowd that this particular game has caught fire with probably aren't familiar with this, aren't used to it being part of their food group, and so they're reacting kind of violently. You know, think of things like bloody Rust or V-Rising or whatever. They all have the same mechanic where you essentially have a base game upkeep that ticks while you're offline in the source of sort of like resource mats in your HQ, that sort of thing. It's the same sort of thing, but in this case what it does is it restricts or opens access to extra vendors. So it's a unique system, and I'm glad that they're not just going with copy-paste Tarkov, but we will see how it shakes out on the other end. So essentially, your impetus to get more water is more is better, because it's always going to drain, and more is going to get me better vendors. That's sort of the idea on paper, and we'll see how it goes. But I guess that's the point of early access. I haven't gone to a lot of the different maps. There are sort of like nighttime variants. So during the day, it's like a scorching red, desert with everything from little small foot troopers all the way up to tanks and mech warriors just beating the shit out of each other. And you kind of just sit back and marvel in the spectacle for the most part. You don't want to get involved. A lot of it is adjacent to a sort of idle game at times where you kind of watch it happen in front of you and in a way revel in it. It's cool. I've seen, tanks trading shots with each other, and it's pretty cool to just watch and then wait for one side to win and then move on, and then you go in and you kind of scoop up the loot. The instances don't seem humongous, and they're not procedural, so you start to figure them out after a while. You start to memorize them. And the water, which is the lifeblood, like picking up bits of guns and bits of tank to trade, is all good and well, and it is actually a pretty good loop. There's a reason Tarkov has essentially created an entire extraction genre on the back of it. But the thing that kind of miffs me a little bit is that the water seems to be in set locations. I think maybe the spawn is random, but I feel like the devs, whether they mean it or not, are encouraging sort of critical path route runs, which I don't particularly like. It's not really part of the scavenger mindset. You wouldn't just go and rerun the same area in the same exact line day after day. Now, I feel like maybe that needs some tuning, and maybe they should just make water randomly drop all over the environment. But then again, how do you do that? You can't exactly have foot troopers dropping it. That'd be weird. So I suppose it has to have spawn points. Anyway, I don't exactly have a solution, but currently as it works, I think the idea is that you memorize a couple of spots where it does spawn and you just do route runs, which I think creates a linear experience and it takes some of the magic out of it. But yeah, it's messy. Performance is a bit all over the place. The UI is yuck. I think at times it's okay, like where you get sort of little indicators pop up telling you where loot is in proximity, but even just trying to fiddle around and interface with the loot is infuriating. You don't have like a center of screen aim reticle, and there's something to be said, I don't know what the term would be, but it's almost like framing. If you frame a picture when you take a photo or a shot in a movie, you can tell when the framing's wrong, when it's off, when the thing that should be center is off center. It's difficult to describe. And the thing is, with this game, you can sort of ADS to center of screen, and it would seem that your gun default in third person is actually set at direct center of the screen, but because of the way that your guy sits on the screen, the way that the camera frames and the way that you move around it, it doesn't feel comfortable or cohesive. And often what will happen is twofold. When you go into a fight and it starts to pop off and you pull up to ADS, your kind of instinct, muscle memory, whatever, where your eye wants the center of frame to sit isn't where the ADS goes. And so you think you're aiming at the enemy and you pull up your gun and your gun's not even pointing at them. And it's after the billionth time, it's infuriating. And then the second part of that is when it comes to looting, I can understand maybe you don't want to crosshair in third person. You don't, you want to make it more hip fire or whatever. But because you don't have like a crosshair, you can't really see what the fuck you're looting. So you're sort of trying to click without a mouse pointer. And it gets to a point where you're just going to ADS to loot, which is dumb. But that's the only way that you get some precision and you can pick up some of the smaller items. But yeah, look, the takeaway is it's cool, it's interesting. There is a game here, and it is definitely more of a tech demo than everything else. The good and the bad of everything I say about Forever Winter. Is it worth your time, worth your money? Objectively, you would say no, right? Because this is going to be the price that it'll be at 1.0, and yet this is a shell of what it will be at 1.0. So it depends how enthusiastic you are about throwing your money at projects that there is a good chance won't even make it to the end of production. But yeah, there's a cool idea. There are some actual moments of pretty brilliance, environmental design, and all the kind of units. Some of the ones that come out at nighttime on the maps, it's a bit more stealthy, a bit more horror. So there's something there. Honestly, it's one of those things like, unless you've got a group of mates that are jumping on it and you want to do runs like it's a grey zone warfare scenario, because I got a lot of mileage out of that, even though it's early access, then sure, get it. But if you're just a solo dude and you're curious and you're not champing at the bit to just jump into it, maybe you do just wait to see if it even makes it to 1.0. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.